Hey, what's going on, everybody? Very special guest today. It's Brandon Huffman, a national recruiting editor for 24/7 Sports, to talk about Jaden Rashada as a player and as a prospect. What's going on, Brandon?
Not much, and I'm just excited to have that decision out of the way and, move on to the next high-profile guy out this way.
And certainly Miami fans are the same way. They're ready to go on to the next guy, too. They've got a long ways to go to complete their class. With Jaden, with any quarterback, there's a lot to get into, and I want to get into him as a skill set and things he's bringing to the table, Brandon. But I'm interested in his background. Let's start with his background. Liberty, IMG, in Pittsburgh. You touched on a couple quarterbacks that he was around. Can you just kind of explain to people his background, his journey up until this point in his career?
Yeah, I would say he's got one of the more unorthodox quarterback journeys, at least in the modern era. When you have times now where quarterbacks will kind of shop themselves to schools when they're in eighth grade, find where they have kind of the path of least resistance where they can get on the field sooner rather than later. Jaden went to Liberty High School as a freshman knowing he would be backing up Jay Butterfield, who's now at the University of Oregon. Jay had done it as a sophomore, as a junior, had won a section championship and then a state championship in California. So Jaden knew when he got to Liberty as a freshman that he wasn't going to be handed the job. There was a 2-year starter going to the Pac-12 that had already gotten it. So he went there content to be a backup and learn from him. The next year, the pandemic hit in California. Well, it hit the whole country, but California football was hit hard because they weren't going to play football that fall. So Jaden made the move to IMG, was going to play a sophomore year there, and they already had J.J. McCarthy coming in, who I think suffered similar fate in the Midwest. So Jaden stuck it out, realized that McCarthy was going to be the guy, decided to move back to California, and enrolled at Pittsburgh High School. Well, when he got there was a senior quarterback who had transferred in earlier, and Jaden never really got handed the starting job as a sophomore. So he spent a lot of his sophomore year kind of swapping reps with the senior starter. So it wasn't really until his junior season at Pitt that he finally got the chance to be the guy. And so you might look at his numbers and they're not as pretty and fancy as some of the guys that are 3- and 4-year starters, but Jaden stayed the course. It would have been easy for him to leave after his sophomore year when politics kind of ruined his opportunity to play early. And then even as a junior, there was still kind of some politics lingering, but he stuck it through. And now he's in that position to have a big senior year and really finally have that year he's been dreaming of since he got to high school.
And you touched on it. It's waiting your turn, right? But also competing. And that's the college level, especially Miami with what they have at quarterback. Can you talk about that balance and maybe what he can learn from what he's been through already and apply that to the next level?
Jaden's a sponge. He's the kind of guy that doesn't want to do all the talking. He wants to do a lot of the listening. He'll ask questions. When we were in when we were in Las Vegas in February for the Battle 7-on-7, Chris Singletary, who's one of our scouting directors, who had spent time playing at Michigan, won a national championship in Michigan, had been a player personnel guy at Arizona and at Michigan, had spent time working in the NFL. He is a smart guy, and Jaden was asking him questions. Chris wanted to learn about Jaden and learn about his background, and instead Jaden was asking him questions. What's the mentality like at the next level? Learning about offenses. When he would go on the road for unofficial visits, a lot of times he said there was so much time packed into the visit that he didn't get a chance to just talk football. And when he took his visit to Miami this week, he said what made this trip different than the unofficial he took in April was that he just got to talk ball. And that's what he really wanted to do. And so he's that kind of guy who doesn't think he knows everything. He doesn't think he's the smartest guy in the room. He's the guy who wants to ask a lot of questions, even if it's an easy question, maybe it's a difficult question. He just wants to learn as much as he can. So that's one of those traits with a lot of quarterbacks. They have it all from the shoulders down, but from the neck up, you always wonder, do they have it? And that's the thing with Jaden. He does have it from the shoulders down, but he's also got it from the neck up, and he wants to continue to learn the nuances of football so that he can be the best possible player he can be at the next level.
You talked about having it, from the neck up. That kind of stands out to me. Last year, battling through that hamstring injury, sticking it out. So he finished his junior year, 2,220 yards, 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 57% completion percentage. Also tacked on almost 200 rushing yards and a score. What can you say about that? Again, battling through the injury, did everything he could there. What does that say about him?
Well, I think it says a lot about him, too, because with Pittsburgh, they're also never going to shy away from playing any good competition. They're a public school in the East Bay, but they've had the unfortunate, you could say the unfortunate situation of being in the same section as De La Salle. And obviously, Miami fans remember De La Salle, the best high school football player I've ever seen in my life. Even before I started doing this, DJ Williams was a De La Salle Spartan. So Pitt plays them every year, it seems, in the playoffs. They also play Folsom High School, Folsom, which has had numerous state championships the last few years, one of the most prolific teams in the state of California. And Jaden had to go play at Folsom. They had to play De La Salle. So he's taking a beating, where Pittsburgh might have some talent at the skill position. They don't always have the biggest linemen. And when you're playing the Folsoms, the De La Salles, that's usually where the difference is. And so, Jaden's the kind of guy that he'll still stare down a defensive lineman in the face of pressure and still get a pass off. Yesterday I was asked to compare him during the announcement on CBS HQ, and I said, I don't want this to come out wrong because everybody's going to run with him and say he's the next Patrick Mahomes. But I said there's a Mahomes-like part of his game where he's willing to just stand tough in the pocket, wait till he finds that receiver, even if that means the 330-pounder is coming at him, and then he can make the throw. He can adjust his arm. He can adjust his angles. He can make all the throws, but he's got this toughness in the pocket where he's not one of those guys that's going to, go down or run out of bounds. He wants to throw the ball. He can run if he has to, but Jaden's first choice is always going to be to pass the ball. And so a lot of times that means he's staying in the pocket a little bit long. I'm sure Josh Gaddis and Mario Cristobal are going to be like, dude, get rid of the ball sooner. But that just kind of shows you his mentality. He's got East Bay kids, Northern California kids in general, have a chip on their shoulder. They feel like they have something to prove to the Southern Californians that, get a lot of the attention. And that's what Jaden that you're going to see is that he is willing to take on a little bit more physicality just to prove I can do this. I can make this play, not at the point of it being done. You mentioned the 27 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. Guys like that a lot of times throw more interceptions because they're too confident in their arms. Jaden makes smart throws, and the thing is he's willing to let the play happen organically. He doesn't rush things. I think that that's one of those things that you just can't teach. There's a lot of quarterbacks that everything's they always have a clean pocket. They always have open receivers. Jaden doesn't have that luxury. So when you see him make plays out there, that's all coming from the chest, and it's also coming from his brains where he's smart enough to know, okay, now is when I have to make that play.
Yeah, DJ Williams, I saw him just the other day working out at UM. He certainly looks like he could still play. I remember covering him at UM. And you're touching on Northern California, Ken Dorsey, Gino Toretta, a couple guys from UM, certainly a ton of success. You touched, let's stay on his arm talent. Quarterback, that's where you want to go to. You touched on the creativity, some of the things that he can do there. Deep ball certainly looks good when you watch it on film. What can you say about his arm? How would you rate it? Accuracy as well as arm strength.
Here's the thing. When you see Jaden, you're not going to see a really put together guy. There's a lot of quarterbacks nowadays. You look at them like you could be a tight end with how built they are, how physical they are. Jaden's still a little bit on the skinnier side. And so as you see him put more weight and strength on in college, he's already got the arm strength that's going to rival a lot of these guys in this class. I've been saying this for, the better part of 9 to 12 months. That gap where you have Arch Manning and Nico Yamaliava, Malachi Nelson, Dante Moore, Jaden is much closer to that group than the rankings indicate. And I think you're going to see that in the next decade, that he's going to be recalibrated and be up higher. He's going to have a chance at the Elite 11. And that's the other thing. When you look at the Elite 11 and the regionals and the camps and the 7-on-7 tournaments that Jaden's been at, this is a guy who's had the recruiting process wear on him. But yet when he's playing football, he's able to separate that. So you can just see a guy who's not overly worried about the recruiting process. It's a guy that he's got the arm strength that he can make those deep downfield throws. He can fit a ball into tight spaces. He can make the off-platform throws. He can make every throw that's in the route tree. He's a guy that is not going to just go for the home run ball. You see it in 7-on-7 a lot. Guys just want to go for that 40-yard touchdown right off the bat. Jaden will be the guy that'll pick you apart, death by 1,000 paper cuts, and then the next series that defense starts cheating up. Okay, now I'm going for the home run ball. He can make all those throws. He loves to throw the ball to the tight end. He loves to throw the ball to his receivers that are, running deep, but also running the shorter intermediate routes. And he really can make every throw. Really, the biggest thing for Jaden that he's lacking, if anything, is that he just needs more reps because he spent that sophomore season rotating. Because as a freshman, he was a backup. He does not have the mileage on his arm like a lot of other quarterbacks, but that could be a blessing for when he gets to college because he still has a lot of throws in that arm left to make.
And going into Elite 11, the finals there, currently 24/7 Sports rates him as the number 5 quarterback in the class, top 30 overall. The composite rankings, consensus top 10 guy, top 50 guy. Like you said, and I know you're very high on his future, kind of the trajectory that he's on this path that he's on. For quarterbacks, Brandon, we talk about the physical tools, the arm strength, the mobility, and things like that. But no position is more important than what they're doing with their work ethic, their leadership, how they handle adversity, all those essentially intangibles, but they certainly play out as tangible things with their development. And I know you touched on him. He's a sponge, and his work, the way he soaks in information. What can you say, those other things, leadership, the ability to work, kind of grind through some things. What stands out to you about that with him, or what have you noticed in those categories with him to essentially allow him to be successful at the next level?
Jaden's a competitor. We're in a day and age where some guys will commit early and then they shut it down. They don't go to camps. They don't go to events, or maybe they aren't they haven't committed, but they don't go to camps, so they don't go to events. Jaden's normal 7-on-7 team that he'd been playing with for 4 years, KT Prep, they ended their season at the end of March. The guy who runs it is the defense coordinator, De La Salle. He's big on, okay, April, go run track, go do spring football. We're shutting down 7-on-7. They did 8 tournaments up until that point. Well, Jaden wasn't done competing. He didn't do track. He didn't want to do just spring football pit. So he goes and plays a couple tournaments at the Miami Immortals. He does a couple of camps. He goes to the Clarkson retreat. He goes to the Elite 11 regionals. He just wants to get out and compete. When you have camps that maybe are 7-on-7 tournaments that maybe aren't the sexy, appealing, big national event, it didn't matter. Jaden looked at that as an opportunity to play 3 games on Saturday and up to 4 games on Sunday. He just wanted to play. When guys don't want to throw and maybe, for fear of exposure, Jaden's whole thing was, I want to prove that I am the best. And I think that that's the work ethic that Miami fans are going to see and just really be attracted to, because this is a kid who's never had any job handed to him. Again, we talk about quarterbacks coming in as freshmen in high school and they're gifted the job at the private school they go to. Jaden had to wait his turn, and he had to work, and he had to deal with, things that were out of his control, and he stayed the course. And I think those are the kids that make it even easier to root for, because there hasn't been this perfectly diagrammed plan since they were 5 years old, the first time they ever took a football lesson. These are guys that obstacles are thrown their way, they overcome them, and they still keep coming out on top. And I think that that's really what separates him from some of the other quarterbacks that I've seen out west in previous years, in that he's always feeling like he's got something to prove.
Brandon, you've done an excellent job laying all this out. And I know just the totality of the message that you're conveying, it goes back to something I've heard you say. Look, you still believe he's got his best football ahead of him, whether it's his senior year, but beyond that. And again, the totality of everything you're saying makes sense with that. But can you speak more on that and just kind of wrap this up with why you believe, best football is still ahead of him? And again, everything that you've already said certainly points in that direction.
Again, not to belabor the point, but when I see so many quarterbacks from out west, and this has been kind of a long-standing phenomenon. You look at some of the schools out west that have consistently churned out great quarterbacks. We think of the Mater Days with the Matt Leinerts, the Bryce Youngs, and Matt Barkley. You think of St. John Bosco, kind of with their recent run with DJ Uyunglele and Josh Rosen. A lot of these schools not only have the opportunity for you to come in and be the starter, but there's 5 Division I offensive linemen blocking for you, 2 Division I receivers, a Division I tight end, and 2 Division I running backs behind you. So everybody around you is part of a super team. And those guys kind of just sort of plug and play. Whereas at Pitt, it's a great program. It's a very strong program. Traditionally, it's been probably the best public program in the Bay Area, but they just have never had the horses to match up. And so, Jaden could have gone to a De La Salle. He could have gone to a bunch of other schools, but he went to Pitt because there's kind of that blue collar mentality, that chip on their shoulder mentality. And yet, because he didn't get gifted the job right away, he's had to work to be the guy. They made him go through quarterback competitions his sophomore year, even his junior year. And so this is a guy that, when he just gets to go out and play, when the coaches are spending more time training him and developing him, and all he has to work on is just being a better quarterback and a better football player, and he's going to get to sit there with Josh Gaddis and with Mario Cristobal and to continue to learn at that level. This is a guy who doesn't have a lot of wear and tear. There's not a lot of miles that are on that body, and that's why I think his best football will be played not just at the next few years in college, but really long term, because he wants to be better, and now he's finally going to have really his chance to finally shine.
Brandon, this was great. Your time is very valuable, so I definitely appreciate you taking the time for this. Hopefully you have a good rest of the day, man, and take care.
Thanks a lot, guys. You too.